What if everything you believe to be real, your memories, your sensations, your thoughts, your identity, was not a mirror of the world, but a filter through which the world was assembled? What if reality itself, as you know it, was not discovered, but manufactured? This is not a question of solipsism, nor a descent into abstract philosophy. It's a confrontation with the foundations of your own consciousness. Every second, your brain is decoding light, sound, touch, emotion, time, but it does not passively receive it, interprets, distorts, invents, and in doing so, it doesn't just perceive the world, it constructs it. Yet while we shape reality through perception, reality, in turn, shapes us through culture, trauma, symbols, and language. We are both the architects and the artifacts. So which is true? Are we creating the world, or is the world creating us? In this video, we will explore the invisible machinery that binds consciousness to the cosmos, psychology to physics, and you to everything. Part 1. The brain as a reality-generating machine. Imagine walking through a forest. You feel the cool air, the crunch of leaves, the golden light slipping through the trees. It all feels real, but none of it is directly experienced. The photons that strike your retina are meaningless unless interpreted by your visual cortex. The sound of birdsong, just air pressure waves, until your auditory cortex gives them life. The scent of earth and pine is not out there. It is an electrochemical dance within your brain. What you call reality is a neurological hallucination, one agreed upon by consensus, but a hallucination nonetheless. Neuroscience has long understood that the brain is not a passive receiver but an active simulator. It constructs models of the world, constantly updating them based on prediction and error correction. This is the essence of predictive coding, theories suggesting that perception is not the reception of sensory data, but the brain's best guess of what that data means, refined moment by moment. In this model, your experience is shaped far more by what you expect to see than what is actually there. You are not simply witnessing the world, you are dreaming it, while awake. Take the phenomenon of change blindness. A person's shirt color can change between cuts in a video, and most viewers won't notice. Why? Because the brain doesn't track all details, it fills in gaps based on patterns, or optical illusions, where the mind creates movement or depth where none exists. These are not bugs, they are features of the simulation engine in your head. The brain filters out billions of bits of data per second, constructing a coherent world from fragments. What you perceive is less reality, and more story. But this story is not yours alone. It is shaped by biology or sensory organs, neural pathways, and evolutionary biases. You see a limited spectrum of light, hear a narrow band of sound, interpret time linearly because that's how your species adapted to survive. Other animals, with different brains, perceive entirely different realities. To a bat, the world is echolocation. To a bee, ultraviolet. To a dog, scent. Their worlds are no less real, only different interpretations of the same quantum soup. Which raises a staggering possibility. Reality is not fixed, but relative to the observer. The philosopher Immanuel Kant once argued that we can never access the thing in itself, the objective world beyond perception. We only ever know the world as it appears to us, and neuroscience agrees. What you call the world is a construction inside your skull, one that feels external only because your brain tells you it is. Yet this does not mean the external world is unreal. Rather, it means that the world you know is always mediated, filtered, shaped. It is not the world that you sit, it is your mind that you see, reflected back at you in every object, every face, every moment. The world is a mirror, and the reflection is your consciousness. So when you ask, what is real? The question is not about what lies outside, but what happens within. Reality is not what you touch, it is what touches you. The world as sculptor of the mind. From the moment you are born, the world begins to write itself into you. Before you can form words, before you can choose, you are already being shaped. A mother's gaze, a father's silence, the tone of a room, the colors of a flag, the rituals of a culture, all of it begins to carve the architecture of your psyche. And so, even as your brain constructs a model of the world, that model is not yours alone. It is populated by symbols, beliefs, values, and fears inherited from a society that existed long before you. You do not create in a vacuum, you are created. Carl Jung called this the collective unconscious, a deep reservoir of symbols, archetypes, and myths shared by all humans across cultures. These are not learned, but inherited. Not conscious, but embedded in the very structure of the psyche. The mother, the hero, the shadow, these are not characters, but psychological forces that shape how we interpret the world. When you see a leader as a savior, a stranger as a threat, or the future as a battle between good and evil, you are not merely observing, you are reenacting ancient scripts written in the invisible language of archetypes. You think you are making choices, but often, you are simply playing a role that has already been cast. This is how reality begins to create us, not just through sensory experience, but through meaning. And meaning is not found in the world, it is assigned by the mind. Language, in particular, becomes the chisel that carves our mental landscape. As Jacques Lacan once said, the unconscious is structured like a language. Every word you learn narrows your perception and expands it at the same time. Once you name something a tree, a memory, a feeling, you separate it from everything else. You give it boundaries, meaning, weight, but you also confine it to that meaning. Language defines the world, but it also limits it. Imagine a child learning the word love. Before language, love is warmth, safety, presence. But once labeled, it becomes something else, a concept, an expectation, a cultural performance. The child begins to seek love not as a feeling, but as an idea. The world, once fluid and intuitive, becomes coded. Language now stands between self and experience, translating everything into symbols. And because every culture speaks its own symbolic tongue, we do not live in the same world. A tree in one language is sacred, in another it is lumber. A tear in one culture is weakness, in another it is strength. We do not see the same reality, we are taught different realities, and so, reality is not just created in the mind, it is implanted by the collective. Every belief you hold about what is right, wrong, possible, or real has likely passed through generations of conditioning, often without question. The media you consume, the education you receive, the ideologies that surround you, they do not merely inform you. They form you. You are a reflection of the systems that raised you. Even your rebellion against them often takes the shape they allow. This is the paradox: to question the world, you must use the very tools the world has given you. Your mind is the child of a culture, even as it dreams of transcending it. You see the world not as it is, but as your language and your ancestors have shown you. And in return, you shape your children, your students, your followers in the same image. The world is a self-replicating narrative, each generation, both author and character. Yet something within you resists, a whisper that there must be more. That behind the veil of language and culture lies something raw, untamed, unfiltered, a deeper reality, or perhaps no reality at all, just presence, just being, but to reach it, you must peel back the layers of identity, history, and meaning that the world has wrapped around your mind like a second skin. You must become aware not just of your beliefs, but of how they were planted, because the question is not just what do you believe, it is, who taught you to believe it? Simulated minds in a simulated world, beneath the surface of everyday life, beneath the routines, the calendars, the names of things lurks a haunting question that science, philosophy, and metaphysics have all touched, but never answered. Is this real? Not is this believable, or is this consistent, but real in the most fundamental sense. And what does real even mean when both perception and interpretation are the only tools we have? The deeper we look, the more fragile reality begins to seem. In the strange world of quantum physics, the act of observation collapses a probability wave into a single outcome. Until measured particles do not exist in any one place, they exist in multiple states at once. It is as if the universe waits to be observed before deciding what to be. What does this imply? That at its core, reality is not solid, but probabilistic. It is not a fixed stage on which events occur, but a field of potential waiting to be defined by a mind, a measurement, a witness. This has led some physicists and philosophers to propose a staggering possibility that reality is not fundamental, but emergent, that space, time, matter, everything are byproducts of consciousness, or information, or both. Nick Bostrom's simulation hypothesis suggests that if advanced civilizations can run simulations of consciousness, and if such simulations outnumber actual conscious beings, then statistically, it is more likely that we are living inside a simulation than in base reality, not metaphorically a literal digital construct. If this is true, then the universe is not a thing but a process, an ongoing computation. You are not simply perceiving pixels, you are made of them. Your thoughts, your emotions, your memory, streams of data flowing through an incomprehensibly complex system. But this system need not be artificial in the way we imagine computers. It may be cosmic, ancient, unknowable. Some theories in physics describe the universe as a hologram three-dimensional space encoded on a two-dimensional boundary. Others see it as a massive neural network, or even as consciousness itself computing its own dream. These ideas may seem fantastical, but they mirror something that mystics and sages have whispered for centuries: that the world is not what it appears to be, that the senses deceive, that the self is an illusion, that reality is a veilmaya, as the Hindus called it, woven not from matter, but from perception. Plato spoke of the cave, where prisoners mistake shadows on the wall for truth. Descartes doubted even his own body, trusting only the existence of thought. And the Buddha taught that attachment to what we call real is the root of suffering. So where do we find ourselves now in the age of virtual reality, deepfakes, AI-generated minds? What is to separate real from unreal when experience can be manufactured with such precision that even the brain accepts it without question? We are entering an era where the simulation becomes indistinguishable from the source, where the digital is no longer a reflection of the world but a replacement. And as we immerse deeper into synthetic experiences, we must ask, what defines our sense of realness? Is it presence, emotion, memory? And if these can be coded, rendered, streamed, what remains? Perhaps we have always lived in a one built by computers, but by biology, evolution, and culture. The neural net in your skull simulates your reality so convincingly that you cannot escape it. And even if we are not in a literal computer simulation, we are in something far more intimate, a cognitive one, a self-generated, socially conditioned, biologically limited dreamscape experience, not by a separate self, but by awareness wearing the mask of individuality. But this realization does not have to be bleak. If reality is a construct, then it can be reconstructed. If it is a simulation, then you are not a prisoner, but a programmer, and the code is made not of numbers, but of thoughts, beliefs, and attention. To awaken is not to escape the simulation, but to realize its fluidity, to reclaim your role as an artist of perception, a dancer in the dream. Because the final question is not just whether the world is real, but whether you are awake in it. Consciousness as the origin of reality. Strip away the senses, strip away language, culture, memory, let go of thoughts, let go of time, let go of the idea of you. What remains? There is still something, a presence, an awareness, not of something but as something. It has no form, no voice, no edges, but it knows, it watches, it is. And from this silent source, everything else seems to emerge. The world, the body, the idea of self. It is not that you are conscious, it is that consciousness isn't, all else arises within it. This is not metaphor, it is the final, most radical frontier of the reality machine. The recognition that consciousness is not a byproduct of the brain, not an emergent property of matter, but the fundamental ground from which reality itself unfolds. The great traditions of Advaita, Vedanta, Tibetan Buddhism, and certain streams of Western mysticism have pointed toward this truth for centuries, that consciousness is not in the world, but the world is in consciousness. In this view, reality is not something you perceive. It is something that happens within you, not within your ego or your personal mind, but within the vast, impersonal field of awareness that lies beneath them. Every object, every sound, every sensation, every emotion, is a ripple on the surface of that field. They come and go, but the awareness remains. Even science, cautiously, is brushing up against this mystery. The hard problem of consciousness, how subjective experience arises from physical matter, remains unsolved. Some physicists and philosophers are beginning to suggest that perhaps we have it backwards. Perhaps consciousness is not the puzzle, but the premise. Not the flame flickering at the end of evolution, but the light from which all things emerge. If this is true, then reality is not a machine at all, not a mechanism of cold logic and matter, but a living mirror, animated by attention. You do not look at the world, you look through it, like a dreamer inside the dream. And as you shift your attention, as you change your beliefs, as you expand your awareness, the dream itself begins to respond, not magically, but fundamentally, because the dream was never separate from you to begin with. This is why ancient seers spoke of awakening not as a metaphor for emotional healing, but as a literal shift in perception. When the illusion of separation collapses, what remains is not a person seeing the world more clearly, it is the realization that the seer and the seen were never two, that the observer and the observed arise together, within the same seamless field of being. In this awakened state, reality does not become more real, it becomes more fluid. You begin to see how much of your world was constructed from fear, memory, projection, conditioning, how much was inherited rather than chosen. And as these structures dissolve, what emerges is not chaos, but clarity. A presence so vast and intimate that it cannot be named. A freedom so radical it cannot be possessed. You realize, finally, that you were never merely a mind inside a body walking through an external world. You weren't other awareness in which mind, body, and world appear. You were never trapped in the simulation. You were the dreamer, the architect, the witness all along. So when we ask, are we creating the world or is it creating us? The answer may be both, and neither. Because in the end, there is no world and no you. There is only the mystery of being unfolding, perceiving, becoming. A machine not made of parts, but of paradox. A dance between the seen and the seer. A question that cannot be answered, only lived.